Magandang umaga, Pilipinas. Good morning. You're watching Eagle News Mornings from Canada. I'm Thomas I. Likeness, reporting from our Eagle News studio in the Western Canadian province of Alberta. My city is Edmonton, and I'm here to bring you news and commentary from across the country. Well, it's Tuesday morning. It's good to be back after a few days off. Marco Zeruto filling in for a couple of days, keeping the big chair warm. Thank you very much, Marco. How have you all been doing? I missed you. Hopefully things are going well. You see it's 28 degrees right now in Metro Manila. Feels more like 33. AccuWeather forecasting a high of 35 today. It's going to feel like 40, so find a way to stay cool, a fan, or better yet, some aircon. Expect a thunderstorm this afternoon. If you've got to go out, air quality not the greatest. It's rated as fair right now. Well, the coffee is on. You know where it is, so grab a refill. Sit back and relax, and I'm going to tell you what's happening in Canada. First, we'll take a look at the weather across the country. And our street scene today comes from Squamish in British Columbia. Thank you to Eagle News correspondent Kathleen Cruz for this video. Across the country, as always, we will start with the West Coast. Victoria, partly cloudy and 16. It's partly cloudy, 15 in Vancouver. In Edmonton, where I live, sunny and 16 degrees. Calgary, partly cloudy and 15. We move over to Saskatchewan, where Regina's at 22 with lots of sunshine. Also sunny in Saskatoon, and they're reporting 20 degrees. Winnipeg, still in a heat wave there. Cloudy, but 26 degrees. Now, temperatures have moderated in Toronto. You remember last week they were in the high 20s, 30 degrees, up around there. Well, today it's sunny, but only 21 degrees. We go up to Ottawa, where it was really hot up there. Today they've got light rain, only made it up to 12 degrees. Montreal, mostly cloudy and 14. The Atlantic provinces, pretty much cloudy throughout. Fredericton, 13 degrees. Halifax, also 13. And in St. John's, Newfoundland, cloudy, but it got considerably warmer there. St. John's actually got up to 20 degrees today. Well, some of the stories we're following today: anti-racism protests in Canada, and we'll have an account from somebody who took part in one. We have fewer immigrants coming to Canada this year, and that's because of the pandemic. Another investigation has been launched into those nursing homes in Ontario. Cruise ships won't be able to dock in Canada until at least the fall. A story about a wayward whale visiting Montreal. And we'll have an update on university football. Well, you've undoubtedly seen the violent protests in the United States following the death of a black man in Minneapolis. George Floyd died while being arrested by police last week. He pleaded for air while a white police officer pressed a knee on his neck. Around the world, demonstrations have been held in sympathy with the calls for justice for Floyd. Now, we'll tell you about the situation in Canada, what's been happening here. In Montreal, 3 hours after protesters began marching through the city's downtown yesterday, police declared the gathering illegal. That's because were thrown at officers, and police responded with pepper spray and tear gas. Some demonstrators smashed windows and set fires. There was also a demonstration in Vancouver. Thousands rallied outside the city's art gallery. Standing by this morning is Anna. She took part in the protest. Good morning, Anna. How are you this morning?
Good morning. I'm good. How are you?
Very, very good. What prompted you to take part in this protest?
Well, as many of the viewers are, they're Filipino like me. Most of you can probably relate to how our community has normalized colorism, whether we realize it or not. So at some point, somebody's probably told you, stay inside in the shade or you'll get dark, or maybe you've been praised for being light-skinned. So these thoughts are learned behaviors that we've actually adopted from our colonizers, a behavior that we had to learn in order to survive, in order to be seen as having some kind of worth to people who never really cared about us. This distaste for dark skin spilled over to the way of how our community has seen Black people, how we've gone along with the racism that our colonizers have taught us, and it's been passed down to us through generations. But not anymore, as we've seen through all these protests. I decided to stand with the Black community in solidarity in order to help negate these toxic behaviors and the toxic attitudes that we've learned from our colonizers and that have been passed down to us through generational trauma.
Anna, can you tell us about yesterday's protest? What was happening there?
Yeah, so the protest yesterday in Vancouver was actually organized by a man named Jacob Colander Prasad, um, who also had himself experiences last year with the police. So he decided that as people and as citizens of the world, we should also stand up for and stand up with the Black community in the States and in Canada who go through this racism on a daily basis. There were, sorry.
I was just going to say, what sort of activity was going on there? We've heard about the violent protests in the United States. Was this different?
Yeah, it was really different. There was about 3,500 people there. It was a peaceful protest. There was no violence happening there at all. We had speakers of different races, mostly speakers from the Black community, but speakers from the Indigenous community as well.
Was there much police presence?
There was a police presence. The organizer of the protest actually made sure to stay in communication with the police. The street around the Vancouver Art Gallery was actually closed down in order to give space for the protesters to be there. It was very cordial with the police.
Tell us about the crowd. Were they noisy? Were they loud? Were they disruptive? Just paint a picture for us as to how things were.
So the crowd was mostly very respectful of all the speakers. We chanted along together at times, but then we also held moments of silence in order to really ruminate and to remember and to respect all those who have died due to police brutality.
This sounds quite a bit different from what has been happening in the United States and what we told you about earlier in Montreal. At any time you were there, did you feel unsafe at any time?
So the only safety issue that I really had was one that I thought about a lot before deciding to participate, which is the current pandemic that was happening. However, the organizers made it really clear that if you were sick, you shouldn't come out and help us. Everybody was asked to wear face masks. Everybody was asked to stay 6 feet apart from each other. All of these things were generally respected. There were a lot of volunteers who were handing out masks to people who decided to come without one. So really, the coronavirus was the only thing that was making us feel a little bit unsafe, but we followed the protocols. So otherwise, we didn't fear anybody else who was there.
And we'll actually have some advice in a few minutes from the Chief Public Health Officer of Canada on how to conduct yourself safely in a protest. I want to thank you for your time this morning, Anna. Is there quickly anything else you would like to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, we need to hold each other accountable. I think this is what all these protests are about. As non-Black people of color, we have to stand up with those who were affected by systematic oppression in the ways that we can never fully comprehend. And this doesn't have to be through protest. I understand that there's a pandemic and that not everybody can go out and protest. I understand that not everybody has the disposable income to be able to donate to all the different organizations. But standing with the Black community can also be seen in ways where we call out our elders when maybe they say something that is distasteful towards people with darker colored skin. It can be in ways where we call out our friends or family members who use words that aren't meant for us to use. By being a little bit more aware about the effect of the things that we say and the things that we do, we can all come together to be better people for everybody in the world.
That's good advice, and thanks for the insight, Anna. You have a good morning. Now, in Toronto, another rally, Eagle News correspondent Sabrina Solano de los Reyes brings us this account.
Last Saturday, thousands of anti-racism protesters marched through downtown Toronto in the wake of the tragic death of Regis Korchinski-Paquette last Wednesday. Organized by the group Not Another Black Life, the rally aims to emphasize the ongoing racism happening in the city and throughout the world. From Christie Pitts to Queen's Park, the protesters rallied for justice and equality, demanding for answers to the recent death of Korchinski-Paquette, who fell off her apartment balcony at High Park while in the presence of the police. Mayor John Tory gave his thoughts on the questions surrounding Korchinski-Paquette at his press conference this past Friday.
Well, I don't think, no matter which way you look at this or from what perspective or whose perspective, this can be seen as anything other than a terrible tragedy. And our condolences obviously go out to the family and the friends of this woman who lost her life. I think now it is important for us to let a system that is in place to provide for an independent and very thorough investigation take its course, to remain calm while that is going on. I hope that it can be done as quickly as possible because I think it's appropriate in the circumstances it should be.
Toronto Police Chief Mark Saunders also stated that the Toronto Police is fully cooperating with the Special Investigations Unit about the issue, but is not yet permitted to make any statement at this time. As an ongoing initiative, the City of Toronto proposes an anti-Black racism action plan to effectively reach out to advocates, leaders, and organizers within Black communities to work together with the city.
We may be doing better than some other places, but it's still a fact. That's why we have an anti-Black racism unit here at the City of Toronto, the first of its kind in North America. And so we're on to the fact that this is a long-standing problem and something needs to be done about it. And I'm not tying that necessarily to any particular case at all, just the fact of that existence. And if that's what's being marked by a protest, then you know, I don't think there's anything about that that is other than, you know, perfectly appropriate in a democracy. But I think we need to have patience. We need to have calm while the people in the independent provincial organization go about seeing exactly what happened here and getting the answers that everybody wants.
Amidst a widespread COVID-19 pandemic, social issues, discrimination, and racism still exist and prevail. However, community efforts for change will keep on working to create a nation stronger, inclusive, and equitable. In Toronto, Sabrina Solano de los Reyes, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau this morning weighed in on the issue. He told his daily briefing that he supports protests as long as they are peaceful.
As for those who took advantage of these peaceful protests to do significant damage to communities and stores, as we saw in Montreal, we have to condemn those actions strongly. They do not represent the peaceful protesters who are standing up for very real issues in Canada. We need to continue to make sure that peaceful protest is always able to happen in Canada.
And Trudeau added, Canada is not immune to racism.
As a country, we can't pretend that racism doesn't exist here. Anti-Black racism is real. Unconscious bias is real. And systemic discrimination is real. And they happen here in Canada. The status quo, where people face violence because of the color of their skin, is unacceptable. No parent should have to once again explain to their kids that they or their friends might face racism. It is time, it is past time for this to change.
And as we've heard through this report on this issue, while racism is not as overt as it is in the United States, it's nevertheless endemic in this country. Well, Canada's top doctor has some words of advice for protesters. Dr. Theresa Tam today at her news conference says signs and noisemakers are safer ways for demonstrators to express themselves rather than shouting. She says shouting and that type of behavior can potentially spread more droplets. Canada's plan to welcome a record number of immigrants this year has taken a hit because of the pandemic. A study by the Royal Bank of Canada says the country had expected to take in 370,000 people this year, a record number. Now it'll only be about half that amount. The study says repercussions from the decrease will be felt throughout the economy because of our dependence on foreign labor and our aging populations. Some of the worst off areas will be industries like urban renewal, urban rental and housing markets, labor shortages, and universities. Still to come, don't plan on boarding a cruise ship at a Canadian port until at least the fall. A very large marine animal is having a whale of a time in Vancouver, and we'll get an update on university football. You're watching Eagle News Mornings from Canada.
Kahit na maraming kababayan natin ang nasa loob lang ng kanilang tahanan, hindi naman ito naging hadlang upang ipamalas nila ang natatangi nilang galing.
Ano ang nangyari sa'yo?
Sa ating next episode, saksihan ang online audition ng ating mga TNG aspirants. Siyempre, dito lang yan sa pinakamalaking talent competition sa Pilipinas, Tagisan ng Galing.
This program is presented by SMC Infrastructure, building a better world. Sandig sugar-free white coffee, puno ng white coffee taste without the sugar, kaya lower calories. Try mo na Sandig sugar-free white coffee. Sarap ng white coffee, now sugar-free. Vet-approved Nutri-Chunks, the only premium dog food with active boost for optimum energy and prebiotics that help strengthen immunity. Just like Catherine Bernardo, gawing listo, ganado ang fur babies niyo. Listo ganado sa Nutri-Chunks. Magnolia Chicken Templados, delicious, ready to cook and freshly marinated daily. Pure Foods Luncheon Meat, pure sarap for every family. Star Chunky Cheese Corned Beef, ang cheesy ng corned beef mo. Walang duda, kids can tell na #1 ang Pure Foods Tender Juicy. Ang tender, ang juicy, ang sarap. Co-presented by Cooper, expert in air conditioning and electromechanical. Also engaged in structural, electrical, fire protection, plumbing, and sanitary services. Cooper, your ultimate MEPS and air conditioning solutions. Unlad Incorporated International, fight against global poverty. New San Jose Builders Incorporated. Canrib Corporation, your ventilation and air conditioning specialist. Vita Herbs Philippines Green Coffee, masarap, mabango, at healthy pa. Puerto Rico Resort and Convention Center, Cabiao, Nueva Ecija. I love Puerto Rico. In participation with Rain or Shine Elastomeric Waterproofing Paint, Matinco. R Square Variables Incorporated, CompuZell Computer Services, Saisho International Trading Corporation, DN Steel, EMAC UPB Roof Corporation.
Hey, Gretchen Ho here, and I'm a white coffee lover. Creamy kasi, and very yummy. Pero mas masarap kung hindi nakaka-guilty. Check my new discovery, Sandmade Sugar-Free White Coffee. Puno ng white coffee taste without the sugar, kaya lower calories. Try mo na! Sandmade Sugar-Free White Coffee. Sarap ng white coffee, now sugar-free.
The Bulacan Bulk Water Project is a treatment facility that will provide bulk water to the 24 municipalities of Bulacan to meet the increasing water demand of its residents. Through concessionaire, SMC Infrastructure also initiated the significant improvements of the Manila North Harbor Port, the country's busiest port.
Listo at ganado ang baby ko sa vet-approved Nutri-Chunks with active boost and prebiotics na pampalisto. Made with real meat, with essential nutrients to help them grow healthy and happy. Listo, ganado sa Nutri-Chunks.
Ikaw lang ang star ng buhay ko. Para sa akin, perfect ka. Ibang klase ang sarap ng corned beef mo. Ang cheesy ng corned beef mo. Pag Star Chunky Cheese Corned Beef, sarap ng corned beef, inangat pa ng real cheese cubes. Kaya perfect ang sarap. Star Chunky Cheese Corned Beef.
You're watching Eagle News Mornings from Canada. I'm Thomas I. Likeness. Well, if you're planning on taking a cruise this summer, you won't be able to depart from a Canadian port. Eagle News correspondent Jeanette Doiseau explains why.
Last week, the Federal Minister of Transport, Mark Garneau, extended the ban on large ships in Canadian waters until the end of October, which will be another big blow to the economic hardship for Canada's tourism industry and the other businesses relying on the income brought by international travelers. Garneau said during the COVID-19 pandemic, keeping the safety of Canadians and transportation workers continues to be the government's top priority. A few months ago, Transport Canada monitored hundreds of cruise ships with Canadians on board sailing in various parts of the world. Several hundred Canadians in ships docked in Japan and California with COVID-19 outbreaks were flown back to Canada and quarantined on Ontario. Here at the Victoria Harbour Cruise Port on the southern tip of Vancouver Island, the season usually starts at April and runs through October. This year, this port has not handled any cruise ships, nor were any allowed to dock in order to keep COVID-19 out. In previous years, the cruise port handled between 454,000 to 700,000 passengers, plus 230 to 290,000 crew members. In 2019, the port handled 257 ship calls. For season 2020, the port booked 284 ship calls with an estimated 770,000 passengers and close to 300,000 crew members. The impact of the ban on cruise ships docking at different ports in Canada also affects small souvenir shops, restaurants, taxis, tour bus operators, and major tourist attractions. Here in Victoria, places like the Royal British Columbia Museum, National Geographic IMAX Theatre, Craigdarroch Castle, and the Butchart Gardens have very few and far in between people going in. The cruise industry has direct and indirect economic impact to the Canadian economy. In a study in 2016, the industry massively contributed more than $3 billion to Canada's economy, including about $1.4 billion in direct spending by cruise lines and their passengers. The provinces benefiting the most are British Columbia, Quebec, and the Atlantic provinces. In Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, Jeanette Doiseau, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
And here's a visitor to Eastern Canada, a wayward whale. He paid a visit to Montreal on the weekend. The young humpback swam up the St. Lawrence River, one of Canada's major rivers. Now he'd been exploring the waters off Montreal for a few days and was likely led astray while on a hunting trip. Authorities say since Saturday, the giant creature has been swimming in the river against the backdrop of the Montreal skyline, as you can see in some of the visuals up there on the screen. He's hundreds of kilometers away from the waters that he would usually call home. Now, humpback whales live in both the Arctic and the Antarctic oceans, and in the summertime, they tend to swim near the poles there. They travel to the tropical areas in the wintertime to breed. Humpbacks grow up to 17 meters long. They weigh up to 40 tons. 40 tons, that thing is huge. Well, the Montreal visitor is thought to be 2 to 3 years old. He was likely led astray while he was chasing something to eat, chasing his prey, or perhaps he made a navigation error. It didn't set the GPS right, don't you see? It's possible that the whale could extend his stay in the city for several months. It's unlikely he'll go any further upstream because there's rapids, there's locks and dams to prevent him from getting any further west. Marine biologists say he's in good health, I should say. They say the best option is to let nature take its course and hope that the animal decides to return to the open ocean by itself. Well, before we go today, we'll take a look at university football in BC. With more on that, we have Eagle sports reporter Schulte Horvath.
Hello, and thanks for joining us. Broadcasting from Vancouver, I'm Schulte Horvath. Joining us today is the new interim head coach at Simon Fraser University, Coach Mike Regel. Welcome, Coach. How are you doing today?
Thank you very much for having me. How about you guys? How you doing today?
Oh, doing great. Nice and warm up here in Vancouver. So what keeps you busy during these interesting times?
What keeps me busy is just making sure the team is engaged. We're having a lot of Zoom meetings as far as with the staff, positions. There's a lot of that to still do, and we're still doing some of our spring recruiting since that has now been cut off, obviously, with everything that's happened with COVID. So we've still been busy.
A lot of people don't know this, but so former head coach Thomas Ford takes the position at the University of Washington. Then you're named the interim head coach at Simon Fraser. And then the GNAC conference cancels their spring athletics season, all roughly within 30 minutes of each other. Can you take us through what was going through your mind at that time?
I was just, you know what, it was funny because, you're thrilled about, the appointment and moving forward. Obviously, we had spring practice. So there was, it all went rapidly. It was just crazy how it all just came together, and I'm glad how it came together because, again, if not, I think a lot of things for our program would have been a disarray. It all worked out perfect. Me and Coach Ford, we've been close a long time, so I'm just happy it all worked out, not only for him, for me, but also for our staff as we move forward.
It's now your first year as the head coach. What challenges do you think the team is going to face next year if this pandemic continues?
Well, we're gonna have the same challenges as every other team. Getting the chemistry right. All our kids are still engaged. All our kids are excited to come back and play football. I think we got a lot of things that is always going to be a challenge when you're talking about traveling on planes and just making sure everybody's safe. The last thing we want to do is get out there and play football, and then now we have a bunch of strike-ups and everybody getting sick. So those are more of the adjustments and the things that I'm worried about, just making sure everybody's safe so they can play.
So last question for you, Coach. What are your goals for this highly anticipated 2021 season?
Well, my goals are we definitely want to win, but more than, everything is always based on wins and losses. But what I want to see is that we've bridged the gap and that we always come out there and compete. It's an important thing for not only everybody to be on board as far as our team, our staff, administration, and the SFU following, but just to make sure that everybody understands that it's more than just wins and losses. It's all about how these young men are grooming, how they are maturing, and how we are continuing to move forward, not only as a team, but as a program, being somebody that's contended with in the team sport atmosphere when you're talking about being the only team outside the country that plays American football. So, we're excited about the opportunity, and we're excited just to get back to doing what we love to do.
Thank you, Coach. That was interim head coach of the Simon Fraser University football team, Coach Mike Regel. In Vancouver, I'm Schulte Horvath. Eagle News, we live in interesting times.
Stay tuned to EBC for more great programming. For sports fans, there's EBC Sports International Home Edition. There may be no games on right now, but there's plenty to talk about. And you'll hear from athletes themselves as they're interviewed by the EBC Sports team. EBC Sports International Home Edition. Find it on Facebook and YouTube. That's our program for today, and on behalf of the Canadian News team, I wish you all good health. Take care of others, take care of yourselves, stay home, stay safe, and stay tuned to Eagle News for accurate and balanced coverage of the COVID-19 pandemic and other current affairs. In Edmonton, Canada, Thomas I. Likeness, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Stay tuned for Aguila Balita, hosted by Maricar Velasco.
Thank you, Thomas. Stay safe. Yung tagapaghatid balita, ako po si